Daniel stood in front of 200 people in designer suits and told them I was his housekeeper. Not his wife. Not his partner. His housekeeper. He smiled when he said it, like it was a clever joke, like I was a prop in his performance. The room laughed politely. Cameras flashed. I stood 3 feet away in a cream dress he told me was too plain that morning, and I felt my heart crack so quietly I don't think anyone heard it but me. What Daniel didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the man walking toward the stage right then, the CEO of the entire company, was my godfather. And the small advice I'd been giving from home for the past 2 years had just saved the firm £20 million. In less than 5 minutes, Daniel's carefully built image was about to collapse in front of everyone he tried so hard to impress. And I was going to stand there and watch it happen. Before this story ends, you'll see what happens when a man values appearance over integrity, when ambition becomes cruelty, and when the person you underestimate turns out to be the one holding all the cards. Make sure you stay until the end, because the moment Daniel realizes who I really am will leave you speechless. Daniel wasn't always like this. When I met him 4 years ago at a community library in Yaba, Lagos, he was different. Humble, kind, real. He volunteered on weekends because he said it reminded him where he came from. His family had struggled when he was young. His father drove a taxi for 20 years to put Daniel through university. That struggle shaped him, or at least I thought it did. I was there sorting donated books, trying to rebuild myself after my mother died. Grief had hollowed me out. For 2 years, I'd been her full-time caregiver, watching cancer slowly steal the strongest woman I'd ever known. When she finally passed, I didn't know who I was anymore. My career, my education, my ambitions, I'd put everything on hold. The library became my quiet place, somewhere I could exist without expectation. Daniel noticed me on his 3rd week volunteering. I was shelving books in the law section when he approached. "You've been organizing these by publication date and topic," he said, impressed. "That's thorough." I looked up. He had kind eyes. Warm. Genuine. "I studied law," I said quietly. "It's habit." "Studied where?" "University of London. International property law." His eyebrows shot up. "That's impressive. What are you doing now?" I hesitated. "Rebuilding." He didn't pry. He just smiled. "I get that." We started talking during breaks. Small conversations that grew longer. He told me about his dreams of working in real estate, about wanting to make his parents proud, about feeling like an outsider in corporate spaces. I told him about my mother, about losing my sense of purpose, about feeling invisible. He listened, really listened. Not to respond, but to understand. 3 months later, he asked me to dinner. 6 months after that, he told me he loved me. "You make me feel like I can be myself," he said. "Like I don't have to pretend." I believed him. We got married 18 months later in a small ceremony at a church in Lekki. I wore a simple white dress. Daniel wore his father's suit, altered to fit. My godfather, Mr. Harrison, attended quietly, sitting in the back row. Daniel knew he was important to me. He'd met him once briefly at our engagement dinner, but I never told him the full story. I never explained that Mr. Harrison had been my father's best friend, that when my parents died in a car accident when I was 16, he'd become my guardian. I never mentioned that he'd paid for my entire education, sent me to London, mentored me through law school, or that he'd offered me a position at his firm 3 times. I wanted Daniel to love me for who I was in that moment. Not for my connections, not for my past accomplishments, not for what I could do for his career. That was my first mistake. I thought hiding my past would protect our love. Instead, it created space for him to rewrite me. The first time I noticed the change was 6 months into our marriage. Daniel got promoted to senior analyst at Whitmore Global Properties, one of the most prestigious real estate firms in West Africa. The company was founded by Mr. Harrison 30 years earlier and had grown into an international powerhouse. Daniel was thrilled. He came home that evening with champagne and flowers. "This is it, Emma," he said, popping the cork. "This is the beginning of everything." I hugged him, genuinely happy. "You deserve this. You worked so hard." "We worked hard," he corrected, kissing my forehead. "I couldn't have done this without you." But something shifted after that night. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Daniel started caring about things that never mattered before. The car we drove, a modest Honda he'd once called reliable, suddenly became embarrassing. The restaurants we went to needed to be the right places to be seen. The friends we spent time with were evaluated based on their networking potential. One evening, he came home and found me in the kitchen wearing a simple Ankara wrapper, cooking jollof rice and fried plantain. It was a Friday, our usual night for a home-cooked meal and Nollywood movies. He stood in the doorway with an odd expression on his face. "What's wrong?" I asked, stirring the pot. "We have a company dinner next week," he said. "The senior partners and their wives." "Okay, that sounds nice. When we go, wear something neutral, something elegant but not too traditional." I turned to look at him, confused. "What's wrong with traditional?" He loosened his tie, avoiding my eyes. "Nothing's wrong with it. It's just, these people are sophisticated, Emma. International. I need to fit in, and you're part of that image." There it was. That word. Image. "You want me to dress a certain way so you look good?" I asked carefully. "I want us to look like we belong," he said, an edge creeping into his voice. "Is that so wrong?" I turned back to the stove, my stomach tight. "No, it's not wrong. But it felt wrong. Felt like the beginning of something breaking." The dinner was at a luxury restaurant in Victoria Island. I wore a simple navy dress, neutral as requested. Daniel introduced me to his colleagues and their wives. Educated women, confident women, women who talked about their careers in finance, tech, medicine. When they asked what I did, Daniel jumped in before I could answer. "Emma's taking a break from work right now," he said smoothly, "focusing on home and family." It wasn't technically a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. The women smiled politely and moved on. I sat quietly through dinner, smiling when expected, nodding at appropriate moments, slowly disappearing. On the drive home, Daniel was euphoric. "That went perfectly. Did you see how Richard's wife was impressed when I talked about the new development project? I think I'm being considered for team lead." "That's great," I said quietly. He glanced at me. "You were a bit quiet tonight. You asked me to be." He frowned. "I didn't ask you to be silent. Just not to overshadow." "Overshadow you? That's not what I meant." He sighed, frustrated. "Why do you have to make everything difficult?" I looked out the window at the Lagos lights blurring past. I didn't answer because I didn't trust my voice. The pattern continued. Every work event, every social gathering, I became smaller. Daniel didn't ask me to disappear. He never said those words, but his actions were clear. "Don't mention your degree. Don't talk about your career. Don't draw attention. Be pleasant. Be supportive. Be invisible." And I complied. I told myself it was temporary, that once Daniel felt secure, things would go back to normal. I convinced myself that being a good wife meant supporting his ambition, even if it meant burying my own. But I wasn't completely idle. While Daniel climbed the corporate ladder, something unexpected happened. Mr. Harrison started calling me. It began innocently, just checking in, asking how married life was treating me, if I was happy. Then one evening, about 8 months into my marriage, he called with a different tone. "Emma, I need your brain," he said. "For what?" "We're negotiating a property acquisition in Dubai." Massive deal. But the contract has some clauses I don't trust. I need a second set of eyes. Your eyes. I hesitated. Uncle Harrison, I haven't practiced in years. Law doesn't leave you, Emma. You were brilliant at this. Just look at it. Tell me what you see. He sent the contract that night. 93 pages of dense legal language, complex liability structures, international arbitration clauses. I made tea, sat at the kitchen table and started reading. Daniel was at another networking dinner. The apartment was quiet, and something inside me woke up. I saw the problems immediately. Buried in Section 47 was a clause that would expose Whitmore Global to unlimited liability if the development faced environmental challenges. Another clause in the arbitration section heavily favored the Dubai sellers. A third created an automatic renewal trap that would lock the company into unfavorable terms for 15 years. I spent 4 hours drafting a detailed analysis. I highlighted every risk, proposed alternative language, and outlined a negotiation strategy. I sent it to Mr. Harrison at 2 in the morning. He called me at 7 the next morning. Emma, this is extraordinary. You found things our entire legal team missed. It's what I was trained to do. I'm presenting this to the board today. With your permission, I'd like to implement your recommendations. You don't need my permission, Uncle. Yes, I do. This is your work. I paused, glancing at the bedroom where Daniel was still sleeping. You don't have to tell them it came from me. Why not? Because I'm not doing this for credit. I'm doing it because I love the work, and because you asked. There was a long silence. Then Mr. Harrison said quietly, You're wasting yourself, Emma. I'm being a good wife. Those two things shouldn't be mutually exclusive. After that, the calls came more frequently. Once a month, then twice, then weekly. Small projects at first. Contract reviews, risk assessments, legal research, then bigger things. Structuring international partnerships, advising on regulatory compliance, negotiating terms for multimillion-pound deals. I did all of it from home, late at night after Daniel fell asleep, early in the morning before he woke up. He never asked what I was doing on my laptop. He assumed I was shopping online or browsing social media. It never occurred to him that I might be doing something significant. And I never told him. Part of me wanted to see if he'd ask, if he'd notice, if he'd care. He didn't. 2 years into our marriage, Daniel had become someone I barely recognized. The humble volunteer from the library had been replaced by a man obsessed with status, appearance, and climbing. He spent hours grooming himself for work. He rehearsed conversations in the mirror. He dropped names constantly. He measured his worth by who noticed him, and I had become his prop, the supportive wife, the quiet presence, the woman who smiled and stayed out of the way. Then the gala invitation arrived. It was a Thursday morning. Daniel was getting ready for work when he saw the envelope on the counter. Whitmore Global's annual black tie gala. His hands actually shook as he opened it. This is it, he whispered. The gala. Emma, this is where careers are made. The CEO will be there. The board. International partners. Everyone. I was making breakfast. That's wonderful, Daniel. He looked at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. You need to understand how important this is. This isn't just another dinner. This is the event. People get promoted at this gala. Partnerships are formed. Reputations are built. I understand. Do you? He stepped closer. Because I need you to be perfect that night. Something cold settled in my chest. Perfect how? Just perfect. Elegant. Quiet. Supportive. Don't embarrass me. I set down the spatula. When have I ever embarrassed you? He backtracked immediately. That's not what I meant. I just mean these people are elite, Emma. Old money. Internationally connected. I can't afford any mistakes. And I'm a potential mistake. You're twisting my words. Am I? We stared at each other. Then Daniel grabbed his briefcase and left without another word. The weeks leading up to the gala were tense. Daniel became obsessed with preparation. He bought a new tuxedo from an Italian designer, imported shoes, a Swiss watch he couldn't afford. He spent hours researching the guest list, memorizing names, titles, recent deals. He practiced introductions in the bathroom mirror. One evening, I found him rehearsing in the living room. "Mr. Whitmore, it's an honor. I've been following your expansion into the Asian market. Brilliant strategy." He repeated it 5 times, adjusting his tone, his posture, his smile. I stood in the doorway watching him. This wasn't confidence. This was desperation. "Daniel," I said softly. He jumped, startled. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm just preparing." "You're rehearsing like you're going on stage." "I am going on stage," he snapped. "Every conversation that night is a performance. Either I nail it or I'm forgotten." "That's not true. You're talented. You don't need to." "You don't understand," he interrupted. "You've never had to fight for a seat at the table. You don't know what it's like to be underestimated, to have people look at you and see nothing." His words hung in the air. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. I'd spent 2 years being made to feel invisible by him, and he was lecturing me about being underestimated. I didn't argue. I just walked away. A week before the gala, Daniel asked what I planned to wear. I told him I'd found a cream-colored dress, simple and elegant. He nodded absently. "Good. Neutral is good. Don't wear anything that draws too much attention." "Wouldn't want to pull focus," I said quietly. He didn't catch the sarcasm. 2 days before the event, Mr. Harrison called. "Emma, I need to ask you something." "Of course. Are you attending the gala?" I hesitated. "Yes." "Daniel's very excited about it." "I thought so. I wanted to give you a heads up. I'm planning to recognize you publicly that night." My heart stopped. "What?" "Your work over the past 2 years has been invaluable. The Dubai deal alone saved us £20 million. The Asian expansion strategy you drafted is being implemented across 3 countries. You've done all of this quietly, without recognition. I want to change that." "Uncle Harrison, please don't." "Why not?" "Because Daniel doesn't know." There was a long pause. "What do you mean he doesn't know?" "I never told him. About the work I've been doing. About any of it." "Emma, why on earth not?" I closed my eyes, embarrassed. "Because he never asked. And because I wanted to see if he'd notice. If he'd care about who I was beyond what I could do for his image." Mr. Harrison's voice softened. "And he hasn't." "No." "Then he needs to know. Emma, you're my goddaughter. You're also one of the most brilliant legal minds I've worked with. I'm not going to let you hide anymore. This will humiliate him. Then perhaps he needs to be humiliated. Perhaps he needs to see what he's taken for granted." I didn't sleep that night. The night of the gala arrived. I stood in front of the mirror in my cream dress. It was beautiful, elegant, understated, exactly what Daniel wanted. But when I looked at my reflection, I saw a stranger. A woman who'd made herself small to make room for someone else's ego. Daniel appeared behind me in his tuxedo. He looked perfect. Every hair in place. Every detail precise. "Ready?" he asked. I met his eyes in the mirror. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Make it quick. We can't be late." "Do you know what I studied at university?" He frowned, confused. "Law. You've mentioned it. Do you know where?" Somewhere in England, I think." University of London. International Property Law. I graduated top of my class. He shrugged impatiently. Okay, what's your point? My point is you don't know. In 3 years of marriage, you've never asked details about my education, my career, my goals. You've never wondered what I do all day. You've never questioned why I'm on my laptop late at night. Emma, we don't have time for this conversation. We never have time, I said quietly. That's the problem. He sighed, frustrated. Look, I know you sacrificed your career for our marriage. I appreciate that. But tonight isn't about the past. It's about our future. Can we please just focus? Our future. He said it like we were building something together. But I'd been invisible in his blueprint. We drove to the Gala in silence. The Whitmore estate on Banana Island was breathtaking. Golden gates opened onto a driveway lined with luxury cars. The mansion itself was a colonial-style masterpiece with marble columns, vast gardens, and fountains lit with colored lights. Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as we approached. Remember, he said as we pulled up to the valet stand. Let me lead conversations. Be charming but not overpowering. If anyone asks personal questions, keep it vague. Vague, I repeated. And Emma, he turned to me, his face serious. Please don't mention your education or career background. It might make me look like I'm coasting on your credentials. My throat tightened. You want me to pretend I'm uneducated. I want you to be strategic. There's a difference. I stepped out of the car without responding. Inside, the ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars hung from the ceiling. A full orchestra played soft jazz. Tables draped in white silk held elaborate centerpieces. Men in tuxedos and women in glittering gowns moved through the space like they owned it. Daniel's eyes went wide. This was his Everest, the peak he'd been climbing toward. Within minutes, he'd spotted a group of colleagues and steered me toward them. Richard, Thomas, Jonathan. The men turned. All senior analysts. All dressed impeccably. Daniel, good to see you. I wanted to introduce my wife, Emma. I extended my hand. Lovely to meet you all. Richard shook it, smiling politely. Are you in real estate as well? I opened my mouth to answer, but Daniel cut in smoothly. Oh, Emma manages our home life. She's the organizational genius that keeps everything running smoothly, so I can focus on work. The men nodded politely, not impressed, just acknowledging. I was categorized instantly: wife, supporter, background character. The conversation shifted immediately to business. I stood there, smiling pleasantly, invisible. This scene repeated itself 4 more times over the next hour. Different groups, same script. Every time someone asked about me, Daniel deflected with practiced ease. She's brilliant with details. She's my support system. I couldn't do any of this without her keeping the home front covered. Never once did he mention my degree. Never once did he say I'd worked internationally. Never once did he treat me as an equal. By the time we sat down for dinner, I felt hollow, erased, like I'd been photoshopped out of my own life. Daniel, on the other hand, was electric. He'd networked with 3 board members, secured 2 lunch meetings, and impressed a potential client from Singapore. He leaned over during the first course, eyes bright. This is going perfectly, he whispered. I think Morrison's warming up to me. If I can get 5 minutes with Whitmore himself, I'm golden. I pushed my food around my plate. Across the room, I spotted Mr. Harrison entering. He was older now, distinguished, gray at the temples. He carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who'd built an empire and had nothing left to prove. Our eyes met across the ballroom. He nodded once, a question in his gaze. I nodded back, resigned. Daniel didn't notice. He was too busy laughing too loudly at a joke someone made. After dinner, the lights dimmed slightly. A hush fell over the room. Mr. Harrison walked to the stage, and the entire ballroom seemed to shift in his direction. This was power. Quiet, undeniable, earned. "Good evening, everyone." His deep voice filled the space. "Thank you for being here tonight. This year has been transformative for Whitmore Global Properties." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. "We've expanded into 14 new markets, closed deals worth over £600 million, positioned ourselves as a leader in international real estate development." Daniel clapped enthusiastically, nodding along like he was personally responsible. But none of this would have been possible without the people who work behind the scenes. The strategists who see opportunities others miss. The analysts who prevent disasters before they happen. The advisors who turn good deals into exceptional ones. Daniel sat up straighter, probably imagining himself in that category. "Tonight, I want to recognize someone whose contribution has been invaluable but largely invisible. Someone who, over the past 2 years, has provided legal insight that saved this company millions and opened doors we didn't know existed." My heart started pounding. Her work on our Dubai acquisition prevented a catastrophic contract error. Her analysis of our Asian expansion strategy is now our company blueprint. Her expertise in international property law has been the foundation of our recent success. The room was completely silent now. Every person listening. She's done all of this quietly, without fanfare, without seeking recognition. But tonight, I want the world to know who she is. Daniel's smile had frozen on his face. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming my goddaughter and senior legal advisor to Whitmore Global, Mrs. Emma Okonkwo." Time stopped. Heads turned. Gasps rippled through the crowd. 200 pairs of eyes landed on me. Daniel's face drained completely of color. His mouth opened slightly, no sound coming out. I stood slowly, my legs trembling, my heart hammering so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I walked toward the stage, and the crowd parted like water. Every step felt surreal. My cream dress, the one Daniel had called too plain, suddenly felt like armor. Mr. Harrison extended his hand as I reached the stage. His eyes were proud, protective, daring anyone to disrespect me. He handed me the microphone. The weight of it felt immense. I looked out at the crowd, at the people who'd ignored me all night, at the women who'd smiled politely when I was introduced as the help, at Daniel sitting frozen at our table. I took a breath. "Thank you, Uncle Harrison." My voice was steady, clear. "I've always believed that the most important work happens in the quiet moments. When no one's watching. When there's no applause. Some of the greatest contributions are made by people who never seek a spotlight." I paused, letting the words settle. Tonight reminds me that dignity isn't given by others. It's not found in titles or recognition. It's something you carry inside yourself, even when people try to make you small. Even when you're invisible. Even when you're underestimated. I looked directly at Daniel. His eyes were wide, his face pale. Real strength isn't loud. It doesn't perform. It doesn't need validation. It just does the work. And trusts that eventually, truth finds its way to light. The applause started slowly, then built into something thunderous. People stood. The entire ballroom rose to their feet. I handed the microphone back to Mr. Harrison and returned to my seat. The applause followed me like a wave. Daniel sat motionless, staring at the table like it held answers. The rest of the evening became a blur. People approached me constantly, the same people who'd looked through me hours earlier. "I had no idea you were Harrison's goddaughter. Your work on the Dubai deal is legendary in our department. We should absolutely set up a meeting." We need someone with your expertise. One woman, the wife of a senior partner who'd barely acknowledged me earlier, gushed, "You're so humble. I would have been shouting my credentials from day one." I smiled politely. I didn't need to shout. I just needed to do the work. Daniel sat through it all in silence. When someone finally asked him, "Why didn't you mention your wife was so accomplished?" he fumbled badly. Emma is very private. She doesn't like attention." The man raised an eyebrow. "Or you didn't know?" Daniel's silence was answer enough. We left before the event ended. Daniel claimed he wasn't feeling well. In truth, he couldn't stand another minute of people seeing me. The drive home was suffocating. Daniel gripped the steering wheel so hard I thought it might crack. His jaw was clenched, his breathing shallow. Finally, 2 blocks from our apartment, he exploded. "Why didn't you tell me?" I turned to him slowly. "Tell you what?" "That you were working with Harrison. That you were—" He struggled for words. "That you were important." "Important," I repeated quietly. "That's an interesting word choice. You know what I mean, do I? Because it sounds like I only matter now that other people know. When I was just your wife, I wasn't important enough to ask about." "That's not fair." "Fair." My voice rose for the first time. "You introduced me as your housekeeper tonight, Daniel. Multiple times. You told people I manage the home, so you can focus on your career. You erased everything I am. I was protecting my reputation by destroying mine." He swerved slightly, pulling over to the side of the road. He put the car in park and turned to me, eyes wild. "Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Standing up there looking like an idiot while my wife gets applauded for being brilliant? While everyone realizes I didn't even know." I stared at him, genuinely shocked. "That's what you took from tonight? Your humiliation? What else is there? How about my humiliation? How about 3 years of being made invisible? How about every time you cut me off mid-sentence to speak for me? How about every event where you introduced me as your support system, like I'm a piece of furniture? I never meant it that way." "You did," I said quietly, all the fight draining out of me. "You absolutely meant it that way. You weren't embarrassed by me, Daniel. You were embarrassed by yourself. And you thought making me small would make you look bigger." He had no answer. He just sat there, breathing hard, hands shaking on the steering wheel. We drove the rest of the way in silence. When we got home, I went directly to the guest room. Daniel stood in the hallway. "Emma, please, let's talk about this." I turned to face him. "We are talking. I'm telling you that for 3 years, I made myself invisible so you could shine. I buried my career, my education, my ambitions. I let you speak for me, define me, diminish me. And you never once asked if I was okay with it. I thought you were happy. You thought I was quiet. There's a difference." His eyes filled with tears. "I love you. I know you do," I said softly. "But Daniel, love without respect is just possession. And I can't be possessed anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means I need time. It means you need to leave." His face crumbled. "Leave? You're throwing me out." "I'm asking you to give me space to think, to decide if the man I married still exists, or if he's been completely replaced by the man who performed tonight." "Emma, please go." He stood there for a long moment, then turned and walked to our bedroom. I heard him packing, heard drawers opening and closing, heard the zipper of a suitcase. 20 minutes later, he emerged with a bag. "I'll stay at a hotel," he said quietly. "But this isn't over. I'm not giving up on us." I didn't respond. I just watched him leave. The door closed. The apartment fell silent. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe. The next morning, Daniel sent an email to Mr. Harrison. I only know because Mr. Harrison forwarded it to me with a single line. Your call. The email read, Mr. Whitmore, I am writing to tender my resignation from Whitmore Global Properties. Effective immediately. Last night's events made clear that I have conducted myself without integrity, both professionally and personally. I have no excuse for my behavior. I misrepresented my wife, underestimated her contributions, and brought dishonor to myself and this firm. I apologize for any embarrassment I caused the company. Emma deserves better than how I treated her, and you deserve better than an employee who lacks character. Respectfully, Daniel Okonkwo. I read it 3 times. Then I called Mr. Harrison. Don't accept his resignation, I said. Emma, he humiliated you in front of 200 people, and he's paying for it, but he doesn't deserve to lose his career. He made his choices, and I'm making mine. Uncle Harrison, please. He made a terrible mistake. But everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes. There was a long silence. Then Mr. Harrison said quietly, You're a better person than I am, Emma. I'm just someone who knows what it's like to lose everything. I don't want that for him. Mr. Harrison sighed. I'll table the resignation for now. But Emma, you need to think about what you want, not what's fair to him. What you want. I know. Do you? I didn't answer. Daniel and I separated. Not formally, not legally, just emotionally. He moved into a small flat in Surulere. I stayed in our apartment. We didn't speak for 3 weeks. During that time, I accepted a formal position at Whitmore Global as senior legal advisor. Office on the 14th floor. My own team. Projects spanning 4 continents. Mr. Harrison introduced me to the company publicly, and the reception was overwhelming. Colleagues who'd never known I existed suddenly wanted my input, my expertise, my time. I rebuilt myself in public, and it felt both liberating and terrifying. Meanwhile, Daniel began therapy. I only know because his sister called me. Emma, I don't know what happened between you two, she said carefully. Daniel won't tell me everything, but he's seeing a counselor 3 times a week. I've never seen him like this. Like what? Broken, but also searching, like he's trying to find something he lost. I didn't respond. A month after the gala, letters started arriving. Real letters, handwritten, delivered by courier. Daniel didn't text or call. He wrote. The first letter said, Emma, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need to say what I should have said years ago. You were right. I made you small because I felt small. I was so terrified of not belonging that I convinced myself success meant performance. Image. Status. I thought if I looked important, I'd feel important. But all I felt was empty. And instead of dealing with that emptiness, I projected it onto you. I made you carry my insecurity. I made you invisible so I wouldn't have to face how invisible I felt inside. I'm sorry. Those words aren't enough, but they're all I have. Daniel. The second letter a week later. Emma. My therapist asked me when I stopped seeing you. Not when I stopped loving you, but when I stopped actually seeing who you are. I couldn't answer, because I don't know. It happened so gradually that I didn't notice until you were gone. I remembered something today. Early in our marriage, you were reading a book about international contract law. I walked by and you tried to tell me about something interesting you'd learned. I cut you off. I said, that sounds complicated, and changed the subject. Your face fell, just for a second. Then you smiled and said, yeah, it's boring anyway. But it wasn't boring to you. It was your passion. And I dismissed it because it didn't serve me. I did that 100 times, didn't I? And you stopped trying to share. You stopped offering pieces of yourself because I kept rejecting them. I'm sorry I made you feel like your brilliance was a burden. Daniel. The third letter. Emma, I quit Whitmore Global. Not because Mr. Harrison asked me to, but because I needed to. Every day in that building reminded me of who I became. The person who valued a title more than integrity. The man who introduced his wife as the help. I'm starting over. I found a job at a small property consultancy in Ikeja. Nothing glamorous. No status. Just honest work. My therapist says I'm trying to punish myself. Maybe I am. But it also feels like the first real thing I've done in years. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't know if we'll ever find our way back. But I need you to know I'm not the same person who stood in that ballroom. I'm trying to become someone worthy of you. Even if it's too late. Daniel. I read each letter multiple times. I didn't respond. 6 months passed. I threw myself into work. Led a team that restructured 3 international deals. Published an article on ethical property acquisition that got picked up by legal journals worldwide. Rebuilt my professional identity from the ground up. But late at night, in the quiet of our apartment that felt too big for one person, I thought about Daniel. Not the man from the gala, but the man from the library. The one who listened. The one who saw me. I wondered if that person still existed. Or if he'd been a performance too. One evening, 7 months after the gala, I agreed to meet Daniel for coffee. Neutral ground. A small cafe in Yaba, not far from the library where we'd met. He was already there when I arrived. He looked different. Thinner. Less polished. His hair was longer, slightly messy. He wore a simple shirt, no designer labels. When he saw me, he stood immediately, nervous. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. I sat down. "I can't promise anything." "I know." We ordered coffee. Sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, I spoke. "Why did you quit Whitmore?" "Because I couldn't be that person anymore. The one who measured worth by proximity to power. I needed to figure out who I am when no one's watching." "And who are you?" He met my eyes. "I'm still figuring that out. But I know who I'm not. I'm not the man who made you feel worthless. I'm not the man who valued image over integrity. I'm not the man who stood in that ballroom." Words are easy, Daniel. I know. That's why I'm not just offering words. I've been volunteering again. Back at the library. Every weekend. No agenda, no networking. Just showing up. I blinked, surprised. Why? Because that's where I found myself the first time. Before ambition corrupted me. I'm trying to remember what it felt like to do something good without expecting reward. We talked for 2 hours. He didn't make excuses. Didn't minimize what he'd done. He just told the truth. About his insecurity. His fear. His desperate need to prove he belonged. And how that need had destroyed the best thing in his life. "I don't know if we can fix this," I said finally. "Neither do I," he replied. "But Emma, I want to try. Not because I can't live without you, but because I don't want to live without trying to become the man you deserved all along." I didn't answer immediately. I just studied him, looking for signs of performance, of manipulation. But all I saw was exhaustion. And maybe, just maybe, honesty. "If we do this," I said slowly, "it's not going back to how things were. It's building something completely new. With new rules." "What rules?" "We go to therapy. Together. Not just you. Both of us." "Okay. You don't speak for me. Ever. Not in social situations, not in private. I have my own voice." "Absolutely. And Daniel, if you ever make me feel small again, I'm done. No second chances. This is the second chance." He nodded, eyes bright. "I understand. I mean it. One strike. I know. And I won't waste this." We started slowly. Weekly coffee meetings. Therapy sessions that were painful and necessary. Conversations where we dismantled every toxic pattern we'd built. We didn't live together, didn't rush, just rebuilt trust one honest moment at a time. 8 months after the gala, we went back to the library in Yaba, back to where we'd started. We volunteered together, shelving books side by side. And for the first time in years, it felt real. 1 year after the gala, we renewed our vows. Not in a big ceremony, just the two of us and Mr. Harrison in a small church. The vows were different this time. Honest, specific. Daniel promised to honor my voice, my career, my autonomy. To celebrate my success instead of fearing it. To see me fully, every day, for the rest of his life. I promised to speak my truth, to never make myself small for his comfort, to demand the respect I deserved. We're still together. It's not perfect. Some days are hard. The memory of that ballroom still stings. Trust, once broken, never fully heals, it just learns to walk with a limp. But it's real. And real is better than perfect. Daniel now runs his own small consultancy. Honest work. Modest. No pretense. He's good at it. And more importantly, he's at peace with it. I'm still at Whitmore Global, leading a team that just closed the largest international property deal in West African history. My career is thriving, and Daniel celebrates every milestone like it's his own. Last week, we attended a company event together. Someone asked Daniel what he did for work. Before he could answer, I spoke. He runs an ethical property consultancy. He's brilliant at it. I'm very proud of him. Daniel's eyes met mine. Grateful. Humbled. Real. Later, the same person asked me what I did. Daniel stayed quiet, waiting. I answered for myself. And when I finished, Daniel added, "She's the smartest person I know. I'm lucky she tolerates me." People laughed. But it wasn't a performance. It was the truth. Here's what I learned. You teach people how to treat you. If you make yourself small, they'll keep you small. If you silence your voice, they'll speak over you. And if you wait for permission to matter, you'll wait forever. I also learned that some people can change. Not easily, not quickly, but genuinely. Daniel is proof. He wasn't irredeemable. He was just lost. And he chose to find himself. But here's the most important lesson. You don't need someone else to validate your worth. You don't need a stage or applause or recognition. You just need to know who you are and refuse to be anyone else. I am Emma Okonkwo. I am a lawyer. I am an advisor. I am powerful. I am worthy. And I always was. Even when I was invisible. Even when I was silent. Even when I stood in that ballroom and felt my heart break. I was always enough. And so are you. Please share with your friends and family. Turn on your notifications bell to get our notifications. Give us a thumbs up and please hit the subscribe button.